We'll go ahead and kick it off. This is not flight school. These are just headphones and a microphone that I like to use, and they sound pretty good. So you didn't log into the wrong thing. So thank you all for joining to learn a little bit more about our GPS tracking platform and timing platform as well. So about 45 minutes, I'm going to do some PowerPoint presentations, some screen shares, and hopefully you'll have a good idea about how our system works and how it can work for you on your events. I think if you have a question, I think there's probably only going to be less than, maybe 10, 15 of us here. So if you do have a question, just stop me at that point and I'll try and answer it quickly. And if it's going to take too long, I'll just kind of circle back towards the end. I am recording this session, so bear that in mind, and we'll kind of post it afterwards. All right. Just getting my sharing going. Hopefully you can all see that. All right, so a little bit about me. Won't take long on that. So Adventure Enablers, we've been around for about 10, 12 years. We used to be called Rev3 Adventure, hosting adventure races, trail runs, outdoor endurance events for the past 10, 15 years, organizing them. Started getting into timing with on the adventure racing side, really with ePunch, just number of people coming out and being able to track and time people. We needed a solution we could scale up with. Branched out into doing RFID timing for 5Ks, half marathons, and we still do that. Haven't done a whole lot of that this year, to be honest with you. A lot of all our timing events have been canceled because of COVID. And then also branched out into GPS tracking and timing about 2-3 years ago. So on the tracking side of stuff, we really got involved with that through Adventure Racing World Series. We were hosting those events, and they use a company called Open Tracking to do their tracking. If you're doing a World Series event, which is a 4 or 5 day expedition race, and there's about 6 or 7 of them throughout the year, one of the requirements is that you track participants, not both for safety reasons, and we'll go over why tracking is so important, and but also for people being able to follow teams online. So we started working with a company called Open Tracking because they were the people who provided the tracking for ARWS, and we just built a very good relationship with them. And in 2017, 16, 18, a couple of years ago, we became partners with them. It's actually a pretty good fit. They're based out of the UK, up in the Lake District. So I've been over and seen their office a couple of times. And what they do for us is provide the platform, which we're going to look at, and also provide a lot of guidance towards the hardware to use with the platform. So there's a couple of things that go in to make the secret sauce for timing and tracking, and they are one of the best that do it. It's a lot of races, all the ultra runs, a lot of hikes, all the adventure races, all use tracking in the UK. The cellular tracking, which we're going to talk about, is super popular because they pretty much have cell service across the entire country. So they don't need to look at doing anything with like satellite tracking for the communication side of things. So if I send you a link for their site, go check them out. They do a lot of events all the time. They track up to 2,000 people in their events. I mean, they do some massive events. And they're pretty much the premier tracking guys in the UK and the rest of Europe. And then we've been basically building our hardware tracking inventory, and we're up to nearly just under 300 trackers right now. So that's been a limitation as we started out. We started out with about 50 trackers to get our feet wet, but we've expanded that out as people have come and asked us to be able to track more people. Okay, so quickly, benefits and uses of why we do this and why we think this is so great. So if you think of traditional timing, what you're really doing is only capturing a very small picture of that person who's out on your event for a minuscule amount of time. You can imagine if you do a 5K, and I'm the timer or I'm a race director, I really only know where that participant is and what's happening with them at the start line if they cross the starting mat, and at the finish, or then also if I have, splits along the course. And then usually you can do that. Lots of different ways to time people, right? You can time them electronically, RFID, spreadsheet. There's apps you can put on your phone. You can have a volunteer there with a clipboard writing times down. You can not just determine what time they arrived, it's just whether they've been to that location. So it's adventure racing, right? Pin punch, they went to that location. That's another really basic form. You don't even know what time they went. They just know that they were there. So once again, very small elements of time for when you know where people were out on your course. And so you don't know if people are going off course, if they're having a good time, how fast they're going. What we can do is we start looking at tracking. We can know and time where people are really unlimited amount of time. We can track people almost real time. We do that with some motorsport stuff. So as soon as you put a tracker on them, you've kind of moved this individual location of where you're finding people on the course, whether it's a timing mat or a pin punch at a checkpoint or someone standing out there with a clipboard. That whole elements, all that's involved with that is now really being carried by the participant, and they're carrying it in one of our tiny little trackers. So that's kind of like the reverse of what GPS tracking is. Instead of having volunteers, equipment, all this stuff out to time people on the course in very specific locations, we put the equipment on the participants and we know where they are and can have this unlimited locations as we go around the course. I kind of say within reason, and I'll go on to some of the mechanics about the hardware and how often we can time people and some of the nuances behind that. So that gives us real-time results. As soon as someone goes to a location, we know where they are, we know what time they are there. We can immediately tell people what happened and where people were and what time they arrived there. And, it also gives us visibility of what they did. So we use it a lot after a race to see, or even during a race, we see people going off course, and we see people doing it again and again in that same location. Well, we'll go, okay, let's send a volunteer out there and make sure people stop doing that, right? So we do that a lot. We did a whole swim run series last year, and it was super helpful on their courses where you could watch the lead runners, and if someone was going off, we'd go out, remark that area, and it'd be great for everyone else coming behind them. So once again, using this to create a better experience for the people out on the course and the participants, as a race director, being able to manage your participants a little bit better. And then also at the same time, dot watching. So people on the outside, bringing the event to more than just the location you're at. If you don't have TV or lots of people posting social media, it kind of becomes this self-telling story, right? So you can throw it up on the screen and people like watching little dots and can analyze it and do all kinds of stuff and track people. And it's really kind of self-managing. Once it's up there and running, you supplement it with some social media posts, some videos, and it really starts to fill in the gaps. It's venture racing at 2 a.m. when no one's up, but someone happens to want to know where the team are. You can see where it is and the tracking's working. So, high visibility into participants' location, safety, huge. That's one of the reasons why I got into this is just doing some races and not having the visibility of where they were and what they were doing and the stress that actually causes you. You can flip that on that head by knowing where they are. So safety is probably one of the number one reasons why we proponents of the tracking side of things. Course rules, out of bounds, course cutting. You can validate whether people have done the right thing. Great to go back and do an analysis if people are doing navigation, how they got to points, all those types of things. Logistics is huge. No longer leaving your volunteers sitting out for hours and hours waiting for that last team who never comes, right? That happens all the time. our volunteers love it. If they have their mobile phone and they can see where the last teams are or the next team that's coming, they can take a nap. Well, no one's going to be here for the next 2 hours. I can go to bed, get up. And the same with moving. If you're moving logistics, aid, anything like that, it's huge. Got Randy on the call. I know he loves it, right? Our media guys, they used to just sit in the ditch for hours waiting for that one team to come, and then, you know, turn around, grab a snack, and they've gone by. So our media guys love it. They can see where they are. They can go in position in good spots and catch all the good things coming through. And then, you know, outside viewing, dot watching, like I mentioned, bringing people in. And that, I'll bring that up a little bit later. What you're also doing is giving a portal for things for, and we'll look at it in our platform, for sponsorship, right? So, and I'll show you some analytics. We capture all the analytics behind our pages when people are watching them. And we've got some great stats, right? I can show you, I think our last 30 days of tracking, the average view time on pages was about 2.5 minutes, right? So you tell that to a sponsor that someone is looking at a web screen with their logo and they're looking at it for 2.5 minutes. That's like gold. They're paying for like 2 seconds on Facebook right now. That's something that you can sell with your platform and give you stats and analytics behind that to go along with that. All right. So getting into the meat of it. So how does this all work? And I'm going to kind of break this up into really three components. We have and they're very, very distinct. So we have our hardware, the device that's basically capturing the information in the field. So capturing it from the participant. What is that? And there's a couple of different things that we have for that. There's then our cellular network, and in some devices, that's the satellite network. How does that information get from that hardware back to us? And when it gets back to us, what's it doing? And that's basically getting fed into a software platform. We got 2 components of that. We've got the front end, which is what everyone sees and follows the dots on. And we'll look at that, different options there. And we also have the back end, which is the Race Director platform. And we'll show you what that looks like too. And then, of course, we've got the participants. So they have to be involved. They have to be running around with the tracker on. All those added together gives us our GPS tracking and timing. So we'll look at our hardware first. So we started off, so all our trackers use cellular service. So what that means is they're way, way cheaper than using something, and we'll talk about the other trackers. These are the other options, and these are basically all sat tracking, which means that they communicate back to our platform they basically use the Iridium satellite network. It's awesome for events that are extremely remote. These devices give you messaging capabilities, and they have pretty good battery life. They're usually bigger, way more expensive, about 6-7 times more expensive than our trackers to rent. Heavier, and do not give you as much detail. So usually you're paying, every transmission you're paying for these guys. And so we usually, if we're doing an expedition race or something long, we'll probably set them to about 10-minute intervals. So going back and talking about participant experience and timing and seeing where they are, now we only see where they are every 10 minutes. And that's pretty much the same across. We love YB trackers. They slot directly into our platform, work really well. We did tracking for Eco Challenge. I'll drop that. And we used about 130 YB trackers out there, all different for teams, tracking camera crews, tracking logistics, and they were phenomenal. So we used them over, teams were out there for 12 days. We did, I think, mid-camp, we did one swap on some of the teams, and we had great information for the whole time on that. Spot we do work with, they're a little bit finicky about how we integrate them, and DeLorme is too. So we can work with all of them. If you have a relationship with any of those particular devices or vendors, we can put their feed, their hardware side of it, into our platform. But YB is one of our favorites. All right, backing up to our trackers. So as a cellular, they're small and light. So this is what they look like. We actually put them in a little plastic bag when we give them. We seal that. They're very easy, very basic to use. There's no screen or anything like that. Extremely durable, and pretty light. They weigh almost nothing, and they're very small. So battery life is amazing. We went from 3G trackers that we first had, and the battery on life, that was horrible. We run them right now, and we get about 12 hours with about 60-second updates. Now we can get up to 24 hours with these, and we can leave them on for about 6 days with 5-minute updates with no charging. If you do have longer events, we can put a supplemental battery pack on these. And the other thing we do is we have people who do go out and do personal challenges, or lap races, and they stop, and we know they're going to stop. And in those cases, we'll send out chargers, and they can just throw it onto a charge. It takes about 2 hours to fully charge these, but battery life is amazing. It's great. We waterproof them. So like I said, we've used these for swim run, and we'd actually double seal them for that. So positioning of these, we send out a sheet, and I'll actually email you the sheet that we send to all our racers. If it's not part of the race organization and we don't give instructions, we give some pretty detailed instructions on these. They have to be on the outside of a pack, top of a pack. And it's one of those important things that we really stress when we send these out to race directors, because you don't want to pay us all this money, time and effort to do all the tracking, and then everyone sticks the tracker in the bottom of their backpack, and it doesn't work because its cell service is blocked. GPS, it still needs to be able to see a satellite for GPS signal. If those are all blocked, it won't track properly. So we have pretty detailed instructions for that. In fact, the guys in Open Tracking, they had a kind of an interesting thing happen about 3 weeks ago. They had someone doing a personal challenge. She was doing all the peaks in the Lake District. She was at the end of like running for 70 hours or something crazy like that. And she actually had it on her shoulder, and someone came and they actually wrapped a thermal blanket around her shoulders, which is basically tin foil. And it actually blocked the tracker. But they were able to sort it out because they were tracking it for a record, and they called up and said, can you not wrap this thing around the top of our tracker? So positioning is important. And if we know, we usually know when it's not in the right spot, and we can, if it's a longer event, and we're on site, we'll track the person down and make sure that it's repositioned and correctly put in the right spot. Like I said, because we're using cellular, we don't have the Iridium satellite rates, which is why other sat trackers are expensive. So our rental price is based on, we don't have a really set rate. It's between $10 and $50, because if you rent it for a week for a long expedition race, we're obviously going to charge you more. You actually we get charged for data as well. Super cheap. But if you're out there and you want to run 60-second intervals for 7 days, it's a lot more expensive than running a 4-hour event. Right, so depending on the event length, of course, quantity. If you rent 10 trackers from us, we're gonna charge you more than if you rent 100 trackers from us, and some other things in there as well related to timing. We can look at that, and that's kind of also set up on the platform side of things. But if you come to me and it's a super simple course, and it's like we've got a start and a finish, and we want splits every 5 miles, so it's super easy for us to set up. If you come in and you say, well, I've got this weird loop course, and I want people to do this certain order between these checkpoints, and I want this 100 different checkpoints to be timed on, then we're going to start looking at that, and we'll probably charge you a little bit more. But if you start looking at, especially on the adventure race side and ultra side, where you're charging a somewhat of a premium for people to come out and do your event, it starts to make super good sense. If you're doing an 8-hour or an ultra run, and you're charging anywhere between $80 to $100 or above per participant, and they're on a team, right? So now I've got 4 people, and I'm charging them $90 a piece, and are on a 4-person team, and they only need 1 tracker for the team. you know, we can start getting your rental and tracking costs down per person to about $3 or $4, right? It's less than you pay for a t-shirt for them or a medal. So, and the value I think that that brings back to you, even the stress, and if you're doing manual timing and we can take that off your plate, it's huge. It's actually a great deal. If you want to, if we come out and do an RFID chip timing for you, you know, our base setup fees anywhere between $800 to $1,000, and we're going to charge you $2.75 per participant. So even if you're doing, this is almost cheaper than doing chip timing, you know, that you would do on a regular 5K race, depending on your numbers and what you're charging. Now, if you're doing a, you know, a 4-hour adventure race, or even if you're going to shorter distance running races and you're only charging, you know, $30, $40 per person and they're not a team, then this may not be the right solution for you. But anything that's kind of in that area, I guarantee the peace of mind, the timing, the visibility, what you can sell to sponsors is going to more than make up for the rental costs and the expenses that you would pay. And the way we put this together, we usually work with you for a proposal. You tell us your needs, we'll come back. We can work back forward on the numbers. So I kind of like throwing the pricing out there because that's what everyone really wants to know. We went over the SAT hardware. And the final little piece of hardware that we have is a PDA. So this is actually super nice. We have these and we can rent them out. We use these a lot on our back end. So you can imagine if we have 200 participants and we have to assign 200 trackers to people, it's pretty laborious. And so we basically can do, and we help participant management. We can do all that kind of stuff for you as well. We can import all the participants. They have a bid number. We basically have a bid number that has a barcode on. I don't know if you can see this. So this is how we assign our trackers with our scanners. Each participant has a bib number with a scan code on it, and all our trackers have a barcode on them. And so it's simply, we just associate the participant with the tracker, right? It's the same way as you would do chip timing or any other type of timing. You have to associate a person, and usually that's done through a bib, with the thing that's timing them, whether it's a bib number, a chip, RFID chip, something like that. So that helps us massively do that. We also can do timing on it. So if you're in a location, maybe you don't have cell service, but you have Wi-Fi. That sometimes happens to us at start and finishes lines, right? We'll do it at a location that has, you know, it's in a state park and they've got a building that has Wi-Fi, but there's no cell service there. So in those situations, we can do timing with our PDAs too. And simply on the PDA, you can select a location. It's very intuitive. And as the person comes across, you scan their barcode, and it's barcode timing. That's also used, we've never used it on ultra races, but the guys in the UK do that a lot on their ultra races. They'll actually do complete barcode scanning without trackers. They'll just rent out the barcode scanners, and wherever the people are usually standing with a clipboard writing numbers down, they all have a scanner, and as a person comes through, they scan their bib and their barcode. And then as soon as they have Wi-Fi, whoop, everything, or even if they have a SIM card in the device, that all gets uploaded. So there's a couple of different things that we can do with our PDAs as far as timing and stuff like that. And then we also use it for an interface for managing a course. If people DNF, move to a different course, those types of things, we can manage all our participants from the PDA as well. So that's the hardware. So the next component we talked about was the cellular network. So how does that information get from those hardware devices back to our platform? And so we basically can use any carrier. We use T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon. There's a whole load of Canadian carriers we use. Mainly we use 4G. We can use, everyone's got rid of 2G. Actually, interestingly enough, in the US, it's still very prevalent in the UK. And it's actually extremely great on battery life. 3G is horrible for battery life, and it'll suck it down immediately. And 4G has some additional capabilities that really help us. Let me move this over here. So we generally want to see about 80% coverage of a course. This is what we first do. Even before I write you a proposal, I'll say, can you send me a KML or GPX of your course? Send that over. We overlay basically coverage maps with some GIS data, and we can actually, it's very accurate. We've gone out and done a lot of testing, and it pretty much matches up to our coverage maps when we lose or do and do not have cell service. So we'll do that first. And if you come back, somewhere like this next year, Expedition Oregon, we tracked for them this in 2019. We used our cellular trackers and it worked. We had some sketchy areas, and even the year before that, we had some sketchy areas, but at least we knew that going in. This next year, we've looked at it and we're like, we can't do that with our cellular devices. When we did our VASIS in Wyoming, we had to use YB because there were just massive holes of no cell service. So we look for that. There's 99% of the time we're going to say, yeah, we can do coverage for you. And I do like to say, you know, even if you do have spotty coverage, people come back and they're like, well, I know I'm in this one area and I don't have cell service. So we like to say, even if you have spotty cell service, would you see like 100% of your participants 80% of the time, or 0 participants 100% of the time, right? So think about that. Even if you've got an area where you know that's a little bit spotty with cell service, we can deal with that. We can highlight it on a map. You can make with the biggest issue that we have actually is people dot watching. If there's a hole, we get the wives and the daughters and the in-laws all like, my husband stopped moving, what's happened to him? And they're the people who freak out. So we try and, if we can put a map and say, hey, we know that these guys in this area are going to lose service for a little bit, and we kind of communicate that out. But I also included a link for my AT&T maps. And so this is what we use. And so this is getting better and better and better and better all the time. I mean, last year, some of these areas would have big holes. Like you can obviously see there's areas in Montana with some big holes. You know, we're down towards Mexico, this area, they've got some big holes down here. But pretty much there's not many areas, you know, still, you know, New Mexico, kind of the areas that people want to go and do some of these outdoor sports. But on the East Coast, we're pretty much solid. Monongahela Forest has a massive hole, but pretty much everywhere else, we've got great coverage. And it's pretty amazing that the 5G coverage is even coming in right now. So our trackers can't deal with that. But the rate that they're rolling out and the technology they're pushing with cell service is just incredible. So even if you want to know, you can find where your event is, find this map, zoom in, see if you have generally some coverage. If you see any blue or green or any kind of coverage, we can probably work with you. And then what we do is take this shaded map, we'll overlay it on your GPS course, your GPX, or where your course is going, and we can determine the areas that you will and will not have cell service. And it's pretty accurate. And our PDAs can use Wi-Fi. So once again, like I said, you're in an area with no cell service, but you may have Wi-Fi from a pavilion or, you know, a visitor center or something like that. We can do the timing from that as well. All right, onto our platform. So we've got our devices, and now we've got some data. We'll look at the two types of platforms we have, or two different web interfaces. So one is the front-facing portals that people see, and then we have the back-end area that you as a race director can go and manage your event through. So public-facing site, we have two different setups that we use. One is called standard, and I'm going to start sharing some of these different sites so you can see them. So this is our standard page. This costs a basic fee. We set up $100 to set this up, and that's our time. And we'll do a lot of work for you. This guy basically was like, oh yeah, I want to do the AT, right? And he was running, this was a personal challenge. He ran from Waynesboro all the way up to Front Royal. It's about 110 miles. And he's like, I'm doing the AT. So from that, we took that, we basically created the GPX file for him, traced that in, put in the mile markers for him. So there's some work that we'll do for you on the front end to start building out what a map looks like. And in the standard portal, that's included as that's setting it up. That includes your participants leaderboard down the side if you want timing. And so, but it's pretty basic. When you see the other screen that you'll see what's kind of missing from here. This guy unfortunately twisted his ankle, I think, at mile just after mile 40. And so some of these things, and I'll show you these features on the basic page, and then these will roll over into the premium, and then we have some more. So you can see we have participants, and each participant has their own little area. This particular race, we actually imported his splits and ETAs for him, and we can do that for as many participants as you want. Of course, this is a linear race, and we'll talk about some of the different styles that we have too. And we'll see this is just a single person, so we'll see some of the additional details of that after. But generally on the map, you can pan and zoom. Our old platform like this, we actually limited the screen size for our standard, but we decided to just expand that out and give a full screen version of this. You've got a couple of different layers that we give you: open cycling, satellite. The guys from Open Tracking today told me that they're going to be overlaying Windy, which is pretty exciting, which is basically real-time weather on top of your map. Super useful for a big expedition race. We actually used that a demo version of it in Fiji. It was huge, right? We got people spread 2 days across the course. We were watching the wind patterns as they were out in the ocean. We could see storms moving in and those types of things overlaid on top of where all your participants are. So that was great. And then we got satellite image. So we've got a couple of different layers that you can use. The other little tool that we have here is a measuring tool. Super handy. I'm just looking at it. How far is my team's away from the next checkpoint? You can kind of, okay, I know they're going to go through this particular area, or figure out where people are going. And you can kind of do some analysis on this as your teams are working through. Super handy as a race director. And we can change that to miles, meters, whatever you want there. And then we have a little key here. And so depending on the class, and we'll see some classes in another race in a minute, we have these little, so we have not moving. So that's kind of nice. We do do a detection if our tracker stops moving. And we know we're still getting signal from it. We know there's nothing wrong with it, but they're not moving. We put a little sleeping person next to it. And this is so people don't freak out and say, why is my tracker not moving? Why is my husband like not going his usual, 20K on his bike and stuff like that? If we have, and then also we put these other here really to help if things aren't moving, or we've lost service on a particular tracker. We do no mobile signal. And of course, what usually happens then, a tracker will disappear from one location. As soon as they get cell service somewhere else, they'll pop back up on the screen, and all their tracks, which you can see here, will get pre-populated and uploaded. So even though we don't have cell service, or the tracker can't communicate back with us, it still caches all the GPS information on the device. And as soon as it has service, it uploads it. So that's great. If this guy here had lost cell service from, this checkpoint mile 30 to where he finished, when he passed through 40 and he then eventually got cell service, we'd still get a split time for him at 40 because we downloaded the data later on. And then we can customize some of this tracking information here, the speed they went, elapsed time, and some stuff like that. So that's kind of that's our basic platform. And we also have, timing up here, which gives us a full kind of leaderboard. And this will make more sense when we look at some more teams. But basically, we can change the name and what we show up here. This is kind of all very customizable about what you want. Of course, you have an adventure race and you have 100 checkpoints. This doesn't work. And so we usually break that down into stages, and we can do splits between the start and end of each stage.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
This is Stephanie. So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is, even if you've got a course with no cell phone coverage whatsoever on the entire course, you could send people out there with this. It's still tracking them with the GPS, and when they get to a place where they had cell phone coverage, you could download their entire route.
Yes. Yeah, it all
Okay.
comes in.
Okay.
And it's kind of weird. It does it and we do it in packets, and it's very, you know, on the back end side, it's a very small packet that it sends on each data transmission, and depending on I mean, this guy, we were tracking him at 60-second intervals, so you can see it's pretty tight, right? Even if I zoom in, and these dots are, I think they're 10-minute increments that we'll do, and I will look at some of the tracking of how you do that. But yes, it fills it back in. But you may see it's kind of weird. Like if you had a long time where they wouldn't, it would like fill some in and you'd have a straight line. And next time it got service, it would fill some more in and straight line. Because depending on how long it has cell service for, it updates the information. But yes, totally. If I could go and time an entire course with absolutely zero cell service, they could get back into cell service and I would have their entire tracks and all their times for every checkpoint that they went through.
I see. So the only thing the cell phone coverage is doing is relaying the information back. It's still GPS technology that's tracking them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that real time, right? So it's
Right.
this nirvana we're trying to get of being able to see exactly where people are at all times. And so, but yeah, all that information comes back. So that's the basic platform. So the premium platform, I've got a couple to show you here. Once again, one's a linear one, and I'll start highlighting all the other features in this. So this usually starts around $300 when we set this up, and you'll see there's just a lot more stuff that we do with this. And I'll start on this side and move over. So first of all, we integrate your social feed. So if you've got Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, we'll drop them in here. So a lot of people who are doing races, that's become they'll set up a social feed, they'll have a special event Facebook page, something like that. The platform, we originally looked at having notes and having ongoing like stuff and a separate feed for the race information. But people just weren't using it, and people was just still using Facebook and posting because everyone's got it, everyone's got an account, makes sense. So they have this link here, so we can basically, it becomes your race feed, right? Your live race feed. Just a link over to Instagram feeds, if you have that. Then I'll show you this one. On this particular, because it's linear, on this one we can have a route profile. You can't really have this if it's a scored event and people can go wherever they want. So in this particular case, as you can see, as I'm moving across the profile at the bottom, you can see it tracks where I am on the course. So we build that profile for you. And as these teams, as they were going around this course, their little dot appears of where they are on this elevation profile. So that's super nice for linear courses as well. And then we also can build out some course information. And I'll show you a better shot of this as well. So we'll look at that in a second. We can brand it, so you get your logo, your event logo on the page. Here we start to look at some different breakouts of different categories, right? So you want to have a 6-hour course, an 8-hour course, male, female, those types of things we start breaking out. And with each breakout, we give them different colored icons. So this is a nice feature that, you know, they're all in the same spot here. I can click on that. It's going to expand them out, and I can click on the team number and see who they are and where they are. So people are all bunched together in one spot. You can click on that and it expands it out for you. You can see there are different categories. And if you come back over to our key, now you can see this kind of building out. And this is very dynamic. On the back end, you can move, you know, we often do that, move people from competitive to non-competitive, those types of things as they move along the course or whatever they're doing. We also have profile pictures that we build in for teams here. So that's an example of that. We can do country flags. We can actually even do custom branding on these particular dots, but that costs extra. So ARWS, when we do those particular events, you know, countries are represented. It's huge for the different countries. So we have country flags on those different ones too. And you have links to these pages too. Feel free to go and explore them. And then you can see actually here, timing is a lot more extensive. as we have splits through here. We mouse, it makes the split times kind of make sense because they're going across the course, and we have, this is our time splits. You can imagine if I went and tried to time every 5K on a linear course, right, with timing mats or volunteers, it's just impossible. GPS timing, I can do that. It's pretty accurate within a minute. I can mouse over any of these, get the time that they were through that particular area too. So let me flip over to another premium event. This was the C2C that we did this year. This was 3-day expedition race. And so there's some other features here that I just want to highlight. First of all, the information bar, we built this out a little bit better for them. This has their schedule, rules of travel. It's basically anything that you want to put in HTML, we can put in this little information box and have it for you. You can send us information to update there, and we can update this for you as well if you didn't want to use Facebook and use that. This particular page too, we have video feeds, so we can update this as well as the race is going on. So this is probably, Randy, this is probably one of your videos. So in this particular event, each day we had a race video. It was a 3-day event, so that was the last day, and we basically can embed that in here too. They have their rolling sponsor banners down here. So this is our kind of sponsor banner area that we build out for you. And this will cycle through every 5 or 6 seconds through different sponsors. So we can do as many as you like, but we usually say about 8 to 10 is what we like to do. And if you have multiple sponsors, you know, we kind of break them out. Premier sponsor we can put at the front so they always show up. And same thing here, I think we have profile pictures. We didn't do that for this, but we can also have profile information. So a bio from the team, we can add that in here too. And finally on the premium platform here, we can do a replay. So this is kind of nice. We can either drag. So this is the finish of the race, right? So everyone's kind of through the course. We can drag and see where everyone is. Or we can kind of live the last minutes of the race and kind of play it through in, I think that's 10-minute increments that we did here on the last bit. So some type of stuff, people, you start to see this in Strava, that does that well. And we can, if you want to do it in somewhere like Strava, we actually can give you the GPX files with time stamping for all the teams at the end of the race. We see people do that too. You want to load it into Route Gadget, you can do that afterwards. But we can do this replay for you at the end as well. So that is, there's a lot more in the premium platform. That's kind of what we charge more. If you're going to use something like YB trackers or SAT trackers, you're going to have to jump on our premium platform. If you want to use our PDA device, or if you want to use our mobile app. So all of this will display natively in HTML on an iPhone or an Android device without using our app. But if you use our app, it's a little bit cleaner. You can, it's great. It shows your location as well as the team's location. It loads a little bit better. You can download and cache maps, which is super nice. Even if you're a race director and you're going out somewhere, you can download your topo maps and it'll at least show where you are, even if you lose cell service, right? So that's kind of a nice feature of that too. Let me flip back to this and see what else premium platform does, because I kind of forget. So these are the differences. So this is our standard platform. Basic leaderboard and timing, we can do everything in that. Map layers, map tools, kind of went over that. This is all the other stuff, you know, social media integration, course notes, logo branding, sponsor rotating banners, profiles, participant profiles, mobile app, complex courses. So really anything over 20, 25 checkpoints will probably charge you more, because it depends what you give us too, right? If you just kind of give me a sketch on a piece of paper with some stuff, I can make it work, but it's going to take me time. And I give myself a pat on the back. We're pretty good with our GIS and mapping apps. We can make our maps look pretty good, and they're super accurate. We can do the inset videos. I'll show you the post-race analytics that we've got too. Playback showed you that. The GPX files for download afterwards. We basically give you a massive download of all the files. They're labeled by team number, and you can use them for whatever you want to. And the Google Analytics. So flip over to this quickly. So we'll give you something like this. We have a standard report, but this is the last, we haven't done that many events in the past month, but this is our last month's tracking. Oh, and you can see, this is the average duration that people spend on a page when they go there. Nearly 5 minutes. It's huge. You know, and they usually come back a couple of times. This particular, and we give you all these analytics, and we can break it down to whatever you want. We can tell you where people came from, how long they were there, what they did on the page. So we'll give you, we usually give a kind of a standard download report and send you this after the event. If you have great numbers, great to share it with your sponsors. Not so great, you can keep it quiet, right? But at least you'll know. All right. So race director dashboard. I'm gonna go over this. I'm gonna go long here. Hopefully you guys don't have to run off and watch a presidential debate or anything like that. This is the back end. So this is kind of like what we give you guys when you have an event. And so I'll show you some of the quick things that you can do when you're in here. We'll go to a scored adventure challenge because this is kind of nice. So it's your participants dashboard. So this is where we spend a lot of time when we're looking at stuff. And I'll show you, I'll just explain a couple of little things that are going on here. So basically the names of all the people, course they're on, a tracker we assign them. We have a lot of detail that we're usually following. These are like when you last got a track from people, battery power, last time it was charged, interval update. So we're following this stuff. When we monitor this stuff, even when you have a race, this is stuff we're doing on the back end, and making sure the trackers are connecting properly and everything's looking good. Battery life is good. If for some reason we see a battery starting to tank, right? Someone may have it in the bottom of their bag and it's just trying to work really hard. We'll go in and we'll change the interval for that one tracker. We'll say, okay, let's take him off 60 seconds and move him to like 300 seconds, right? Let's give him 5 minutes just so his tracker will last. Or if we're on a long expedition race, we'll be watching these and we'll say, okay, it's down to 30%. Let's go out, find this guy. We know exactly where they are, give him a new tracker, swap it out, carry on going. We can see the cellular provider who it was using. And then one of the more interesting, there's some more which gives you a lot more details about the back end commands that are coming. But this is kind of this hasn't done the race yet. Let's find someone who's been out there. So this is a really interesting map that we pull up. So this is called our buffer map. And this shows us, and this really starts explaining how our timing works as well, and some of our geofencing for our points, which I'll get into. You can see 2 different sections here that people did. Over here, they were trekking really, really tight. Like this is basically every time we got a little blue signal, it was an out and back actually, it was every minute. And so we can see they got a little dot. Every single one of those dots is basically a timing point for us. So on a track, it's really cool because they're all super close together. Paddle, this is a paddle, pretty close together there, moving slowly. Over here, they're biking, right? So obviously they're running, they can go further in a minute on a bike than they can when they're on foot or in a boat. And so this is what we really help as well in course design and timing, that we know, okay, our geofence here needs to be maybe 300 feet, right? Or 300 meters. So they get caught as they come through on a bike. Whereas here we can make our geofence a lot tighter. And if the tighter your geofence, the better, especially for something like an adventure race where you want to know specifically when someone was in an exact location, right? And that's why we do e-punching and pin punching as well. I mean, it's like you were at that exact spot. So if I'm on a bike and I'm riding down the road and I'm only tracking you every minute, and I'm going down a hill, and I'm doing 20 miles an hour, and I rip through my checkpoint and carry on, I may be outside my geofence that I can catch that time. So when we start looking at timing and geofencing, that's a big thing that we do too. We look at your course, you say where checkpoints are, and we can help you figure out, yeah, it's going to work. No, it's not going to work. Maybe you have a point that they're coming through before they're really on that leg, right? And they may trip that timing point. It's important for us to know how your course flows so we can set up the rules on the back end to make that all work right. And if we know, if you pretty much give us a rules of travel or turn-by-turn directions or a GPX file of your course, that's what we do on the back end. We make sure that we put timing points that are going to work and are correct. So that's that part of the buffer. Pretty interesting stuff. For each participant, we obviously have lots of information about them that we can put in. The course type, we build them out for you too. So 50K, 100K, 8 hour, 10 hour, they're all our different course types, and you can just move your participants here if you want. Start dates and end dates of your events, very important in timing. If you guys have ever done timing with timing systems, it's very particular about start and end dates. And if you get them wrong, nothing works properly. And then we just have some other tabs that you can put in there. Emergency contact info. If you want to use this as your kind of your CMS for the event, you can. Medical information if you want to store this. Team profile information that would get showed on the main page. Back-end notes. This is how you can upload participant photos. Here's our target EDA time. So linear event, we know when people are coming through, we can put that. All this information can be, we'll give you a template spreadsheet. You can give us all the people, we'll give you the format, we'll suck it all in, it puts it in here for you. You don't have to do any entering. And in fact, usually people just give us stuff in random formats and we'll clean it up and we'll import it for them. So that's kind of our participant page. So this is a great page. This is one of the best pages. So this is how all the timing works. So we can see here times for people at individual checkpoints, or we can see all times at one checkpoint. So let's say I want to see what time everyone went through checkpoint 101. I can do my checkpoint here. And now I have all my participants and I can see the time they went through my checkpoint. So if it's green, it means they got caught by my geofence. So obviously some things get screwed up, right? Maybe their tracker died, or it was in the bottom of their bag, or they forgot to take it, or something happened, right? I can go back and manually enter time. So that happened here. Something happened with these two guys. Can't remember what, but we went back and actually manually entered their time and their score here. And then we could just save it. And we can override our geofence timing too. So if something happens, gets wrong, they get caught at the wrong time, or it pings them on a geofence when it shouldn't, we can come and overwrite this stuff. If you wanted, you could just actually come in here and use this to do timing, right? You didn't even have to geofence. I could come in here and have my spreadsheet from my course of checkpoint 101, and so a volunteer stood there and took all the times down. I could come in here and enter all the times, or at least cross-check them with my geofencing. So this stuff is basically a super nice timing system. The other way I can view it is by a particular participant. So I want to see what Paul Miller did in this race. So now I can see it's kind of sorted a little bit differently. He's really screwed up on this one. I can't remember, maybe something happened with him as well. But we manually entered these times for him here. He's got these geofence times, and we can come and edit any of these times and add them. That wasn't a good one. What happened with Paul? Same with Matt. You know what? They did some stuff on the back end while this race was going on, and we had to do some manual entry for people. Or maybe that wasn't active at the time. Anyway, so this is how you can go in and manually adjust your times. Enter them manually, check out what time they were geofenced, and do all this update here. Lastly, this is the checkpoint page. So this is really useful, especially on a linear race. It's kind of showing me what my geofence is, and we do adjust this, and we'll help you figure all that stuff out. But it tells you how many people have been through it. So you can imagine I've got an ultra run. and got 150 participants out in the course. I want to see how many people are still waiting to come through here, right? If I've DNF'd them, they're not going to be pending, but this is not a linear course, so it's not a great example. But I can see I've got 7 people who never went to checkpoint 101. So this is a great dashboard for you as a race director to go and see on a linear race how it's progressing. Tell your volunteers to go home right at 101 when all you've got all your participants have come through. So that's kind of the back end. I don't think you've got GPX files. This is how you can download your GPX files at the end. And then we've got some basic reports. These aren't great, but we'll work with you to basically figure out what kind of reports you want. All right, I'm just trying to run through the last bits pretty quick. That's the dashboard. So course types, talked about this pretty quickly. I want to just show you a couple more. So of course we've got scored, which is I go to a checkpoint, I get 1 point. I go to a checkpoint, I get 10 points. We can assign any point value to any checkpoint. And you basically would tell us that, right? And so at the end, that's usually I win because I've got 80 points and I got it in the fastest time. So very kind of adventure racy scored course. Linear. Let's find another linear course that I had up here. Oh, that's my other scored one. Say we looked at this already. This is linear. Start at mile 0, go around to 100K. We'll get your splits all the way around and track you, right? So that's a linear course. That's that particular style of course. Support and logistics. So we do a lot of stuff with people as well. So we haven't worked with them this year because they've canceled all their events. We were doing a lot of bike support. So they would just rent usually about 10 or 12 trackers from us. It was great because they were all in cars, so we didn't have to worry about battery life. We stick them on, and they were basically had sweeps for, this is a pretty big bike ride. They had about 800 to 1,000 riders out on the course, and they used this for logistics. They knew where all their sweeps were. We do quite a lot with med teams, put them on med teams, we're last riders, first riders. Mid-pack rider. So once again, you're not putting a tracker on every single person. You find some key points in your race and you want to know what those are in real time and put a tracker on them. So that's a good way just to test it out as well if you want to see how the platform works. And then finally we do custom stuff. So this is an interesting one we did for someone last month. So this was based on how far someone could get away from the start line in either, I think they did 12 hour, they did all kinds of categories. It was crazy. So they had people who were aided, people who were unaided, 6 hours. So they had all these different categories. It was very confusing. And they actually started at 6 at night and they went all the way through the night. But in this particular one, it was how far they get away as far as the crow fly. So we set this up for them and did all their tracking. Did this custom KML overlay for them. We can pretty much do anything with overlays on these maps, KMLs. And then we did all the processing on the back end for these distances, right? We ripped all the coordinates out of here. We ran it through a GIS application. We figured out the exact distance that people went from the points, built out our leaderboard. And score for them, basically scored it on distance traveled. So we can, if you think of something, we can probably do it for you. People want us to do some elevation stuff right now, which we can't do. So actually don't ask me to do that. We're going to try and do that next year, which is like how far people can, these Everest challenges people are doing, those types of things. We can do lap races, but it's a little bit finicky. And we're working on that, getting that sorted out so it works a little bit better next year. All right, I think we're almost done, guys. So thanks for sticking around. So our event models, the way that we work is ideally, we want to work where a race director comes to us, says, I want to rent 100 trackers from you, 50 trackers, 10 trackers. We send them to you. You send us your site information. You pay us the money. You get the trackers back. We're all happy. We are anyway. That's our preferred model. But saying that, We'll do all kinds of stuff. So if you would like to get into it, basically, if you're a race director, we'd love it if you said, hey, if you want to enter a tracker for this race, right, contact our Venture Enablers and we can set up a registration site for people to rent a tracker directly from us for your event. You can give us the overlay for your event and we'll put it up there. And then, and of course, we're very good at keeping stuff secret too. So if you don't want your course out there before a particular time or anything like that, we can lock the site down. We'll turn it off until a particular time. It'll become live at a particular time, both on the mobile app and online. And in that situation, then people have the option to do, rent a tracker and basically see themselves on the course. Right? We've done some stuff where we've just rent trackers to people, but if there's no course behind it, then it's sometimes doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you don't do it mandatory for everyone, you can't do a leaderboard. So unless every single person is wearing a tracker, you can't do a leaderboard. It just doesn't make sense either. So there's a couple of other models we do is we're doing an event right now in California where it's virtual. He's got a massive course set up. It's 150 miler just outside San Francisco. People are coming out and doing that, and we basically are doing everything. So he's given us the course, but then he'll send us the participants' information. We'll mail them the tracker. We'll mail them a return envelope for the tracker, and we'll send it to them. And then he does the coordination with them, telling them where to go and what to do. But we'll make sure that they get the tracker, and we make sure that the tracker comes back from them. Of course, he's paying a premium for that. But then at the same time, he's got a model where he can't rent 50 trackers from us from started in August, going through the end of October. So that's the model we came up for that. We do personal challenge tracking. So, the guy doing the AT, we can do official timing for them. And if they're trying to do a challenge or a Guinness record or something like that, we can certify it afterwards. So, basically we're pretty flexible. We like doing this. We want to rent our trackers out. If you have a model and you come to us and say, we'd like to work with you, you can usually work something out. And that wraps it up. I'm sorry, I'm 2 minutes over and I didn't give you time for questions. So I'll open it up. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I'm happy to sit and talk about this all night.
So I've got a question. I often see on adventure race tracking where the races will have a highlighted route. And I'm assuming that what they're giving you is what they consider their optimal route along with the checkpoints.
That's correct.
Do you see that primarily with like expedition style races, and with a score style race, I'm assuming that we would send you just the checkpoint locations?
Yeah, exactly. So this was, for example, I can show you, this is a scored race. So we didn't put a route on here. It was completely Rogaine. You could go and we highlighted, you had to go and do each section, and we can, this helps it a little bit easier to understand when someone's looking at it. And that's the key thing, right? If you were trying to do dot watching and you're trying to tell a story at the same time, which is what you're trying to do, you're trying to tell a story to the race, you've got to make sure that the map makes sense to the person, whether that's making sure you provide them the rules of travel, whether you do provide them a little line on the map and say, I think they're going to follow this. And then people are like, oh, they are kind of following that. Here we have, they had to bike to these they trekked, these they trekked, these they paddled. And so it kind of makes sense when people look at them. I don't know. And so here, this is what you would see, right? So this is a linear course, but we would do the same. If this was an adventure race and we knew there was some route choice, but ideally there's an optimal route that people are going to go, we would put that on the map. Let me see if I can, I'll pull up C2C, give us some different ones. Oh yeah, so this C2C is a good example, right? So we usually color code that differently to make it make sense too. So this was what they thought the optimal route was. Some people didn't do this. Some people skipped these points, went down the road. We changed the color. So this is a trekking leg, green. All red was biking. Let's go across. This was all biking. They did a lot of biking, actually. That was a trekking leg here. Very short paddle leg. So yeah, we can overlay that. We can color code it and help you tell that story of what's going on. But once again, if it's just score and you want it to be kind of Rogaine, yeah, we'll just put the checkpoints there. We can color code them. But yeah, you can make it look however you want, pretty much. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mark, I got a question. Hard to believe.
Go for it.
So, how does the timestamp work? Because we all know, we look and we see a team tracked at 9:01, and now it's 9:30, and they should have been here 20 minutes ago, and they're not. So, how does that figure out? The time between it tracks and the time between it shows up on the map.
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of different factors that go into that. One is latency. Let me see if I can find let me log into a console. So it's latency. So in some areas where we have really poor service, it may take 5-10 minutes for that information to get out. If we have great service, it literally takes a minute and a half. It's that accurate. You can see, and that sometimes happens, right? You'll see the dot coming and you'll look down the road and here comes the team, right? And then other times not quite so accurate. And so it's all to do with the latency of that information coming in. And that, let me see if I have to log into my other console. But, and that's where we actually look at this stuff a lot during a race. I'm trying to find something that will be good. I'm going to see all my secret stuff on the back end here. So I will tell you, we were looking at his Western states, right? So we're looking at doing the timing for them next year. So we did some demo. This is an area that's really, really pretty remote.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at the buffer stuff here, it tells us a really good story about kind of what you're talking about, Randy. If I can find out where the Western states are.
It's California.
Oh, there they are. So well, this is what we do. We go and test this stuff beforehand, right? So we've got a big event. So when we look at our buffer map here, we can see blue is great service, red is no service, and yellow is spotty service. So I can actually I can mouse over these and I can see latency here on this, look, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Latency 5, that's 5 seconds, right? So they're coming out of, where they start? They're starting down at, wherever they start.
Squaw Valley.
Yeah, exactly. They come out of there and we look at all this stuff coming through and you can see yellow. We start looking at the latency. That's 18 minutes. So we'd like, if it's a big event, and we give demo trackers out to quite a few different people. If you know your course, you want to go pre-run it, we'll give you 1 tracker, 2 trackers. You can pre-run your course. And this is the analysis that we do. And in fact, on these guys, we did a pretty comprehensive analysis because we actually really want to track this race for them. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do about these holes? And in fact, they have an area down here that we know that we could do some timing with our little units, our RFID units, and do some barcode scanning. So we're trying to figure that out. And they also have spots, right, where they have ham radio, and they do have, so the way, and they're doing it right now is they basically, ham radio guys writes all the times down and relays that back to the HQ. Well, what we can do, and even on our back end platform, if we know that these guys should be showing up, and we kind of cheat like this all the time, because we monitor this stuff. If we know that Scott should be at mile 15 but there's no cell service, but we just got ham radio saying it's at mile 15, we'll fill this information out and we'll use this little tool here. It's called pin. And that actually moves them. That moves their marker to that next checkpoint. And so now they're not languishing and sitting way back from where they are, especially in a linear race. If we can do even an estimate of we know where they are and they're moving forward, we can kind of manually push their little dot forward for them. So that's some of the other stuff that we do on the back end when we're watching some of these events. Sorry, long answer to a short question.
No, it was what I need to know. So I want a latency map when I'm at a race.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
And can I make one suggestion to the race directors that you've done for me? Is at C2C, you gave me a tracker. And if you have media at your race, give them a tracker, because that allowed me to see where I was in relationship to teams. It's really, really helpful for your media people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the same like on med staff. We usually do it on med teams, and we've had lots of situations in Wyoming. Pretty much, we did a couple of rescues every year in Wyoming. You have one on your rescue team and your other team, and as long as you communicate with one of those people, you can literally tell them which way to go until they get to each other. And we've done that numerous times, helping two different parties find each other in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. It's pretty incredible. Any other questions? All right, cool. Well, thank you, everyone. And I'm sorry I went a little bit long. I really appreciate you all checking in. If you have any questions, just let me know. Once again, you do have that email I sent with some of those different links on there for the different sites. So feel free to open up, play with them. And like I said, usually our conversation usually starts if someone says, I want to try tracking. We'll say, what's your course look like? We'll check your cell service. You give us the basic information and we'll come back with a proposal and say, this is what it's going to be. So, and we're pretty dedicated. We support your event. We'll watch it probably as closely as you do on the back end while it's going on as well. So you've got our eyes on it too. All right, with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I'll let you guys go and watch the debate.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.